Hello there, and welcome to Context Prompting Mastery for Eugentic IQ. So, most people like using AI like a search engine, typing quick questions and hoping for magic. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that when you're first getting started, meaning the first day or two that you've been introduced to ChatGPT or to Claude. But that said, the difference between mediocre and exceptional AI output is one thing: context depth. And what we mean by that is that there is more information available to the AI than your typical run of the mill, boring kind of out of the box thinking. And so your AI clone can only perform as well as the information you feed it. Now, you may not think about using AI as a clone of yourself, but in reality, it actually is. And the more information that your clone has available to it, the better results you're ultimately going to receive. And this training transforms you from a prompt typer to a context architect. And what we mean by that is that typically, whenever you use a large language model, it doesn't really matter which one. You type a prompt, you expect an output result. And the output result may impress you initially until you recognize and realize that other people are receiving much more significant results. And ultimately, as the slide says here, it comes down to context and to architect that context. And I'm going to explain what that means here in a minute. You'll learn the exact method that turns 1 to 2 hours of setup into weeks of superior output. And this is what we really stress when it comes to Eugentic IQ is to spend a little bit of time upfront. And what you're doing with that time is actually fine tuning the AI so that it speaks exactly like you, as if it's a literal clone of you. So by the end, your clone will sound authentically like you, not generic AI. And that really is the difference that sets Eugentic IQ apart from really any other model that's out there. These advanced prompt engineering skills separate amateurs from professionals. But I want to give you a quick warning. Once you master this, you'll never go back to surface level prompting again. And as a matter of fact, I believe that you will be incredibly impressed by the results and how significantly better they are at sounding exactly like you compared to something that anybody can get out of Chat or Claude. So, generic prompts produce generic results, and it's really the vanilla ice cream problem. Now, you may spend time developing fancier prompts and ask really hard thought out questions and everything. But at the end of the day, you're still going to get the same AI sounding results. And so whenever you ask, write me an email, AI has zero context about your voice, your audience, or your goals. Now, AI is good enough that it can literally make things up and sound fantastic. But whenever you contrast what it writes, even as fantastic as you think it sounds in the beginning, nothing compares to an AI that's finely tuned to your voice, audience, and goals. And so your clone fills information gaps with assumptions, usually the wrong ones. And that's why there's a statement at the bottom of every AI platform that says, whichever AI it is may hallucinate. Okay. Because it can only build upon what information you provided, and everything else is best guess. Now, it's really good at guessing in many cases, but if you think about it, if you're using AI seriously to create whatever it is that you're wanting to create, do you really want that generic AI clone to be guessing at what you may think sounds good? Because the result here is content that sounds robotic, corporate, or nothing like your authentic voice. And you end up spending more time editing than if you had written it yourself. And I know for me personally, I ran into that a lot in the very beginning, where what the AI output, whether you're talking about Chat or Claude or Gemini, it really doesn't matter. They all essentially work the same way. But it sounded good, but it didn't sound like me. And as a matter of fact, there were times where I would get AI outputs and I would read through them and it's like, who the heck are you talking about? Because it didn't sound like me at all. And so generic prompts force AI to guess your tone, your expertise level, and your brand personality. And of course, we each have those elements. We each have our own unique tone. You may not be 100% familiar with it unless you sit down and really think about it, but it's there nonetheless. Same with your expertise level and your brand personality. I mean, you may think you're just another Jane Doe or John Doe when it comes to creating output, but the reality is that you have some very unique and distinctive personality traits in writing that wouldn't you rather have come out in the AI that you're generating? Of course you would. And so each revision without context just produces different versions of the same mediocrity. And so it really becomes a frustration cycle where you prompt, you get a disappointing result, you tweak the prompt, and then repeat endlessly. And as a matter of fact, there's very little that you could do to break that cycle unless you follow the methods that I'm going to be talking about here in just a little bit. So context is everything your AI needs to know before it creates anything for you. And so I want you to think of context as the briefing document you'd give a new employee on day one. Okay. And so essentially, you're breaking down all the different elements of who you are as a person, how you write, how you speak, the words you use or don't use. All of those elements come together to create this briefing document. And the more context you provide up front, the less correction that's needed on the back end. And so the context that we're referring to here includes your voice, your audience, your goals, your examples, your constraints, past work that you've done. All of those elements combine into creating a context that not only can the AI understand, but it can mimic. So quality context transforms AI from a tool into a true creative partner. And that's really what you're after here. You want the AI that you're working with to sound like you, to write like you, to think like you. And the best news available here is that it can actually do that, but you have to train it up front. And so we have the 10x rule here that 10 minutes of content creation saves 100 minutes of revision. And that is if the AI is properly trained. So context-rich prompts produce output that sounds like you wrote it on your best day, and that's really what we're after, aren't we? Is to get AI outputs that are literally indistinguishable from us, so that if we read something a couple weeks later, we won't remember if we wrote it or if the AI wrote it. And the best news is that that's achievable and possible right now. This is the difference between using AI and mastering AI for your business. And so basically, there are some specific strategies that you can use and put into motion that will help you get through this training process, because you're thinking right now, well, what exactly would I need? Well, it's pretty straightforward, actually. You can grab any audio recording app, whether it's voice memos or Otter, or just use your phone's recorder, and then hit record and verbally dump everything about your project from your mind, everything you can think of. Not only that, it can be about a project or about multiple projects or about your business in general. You don't need to organize it. You don't want to filter it. You don't even need to edit it. You just want to let your thoughts flow naturally and even include random tangents, half-formed ideas, and another thing, moments. So the goal here is to literally brain dump. everything you can think of from a business relationship and use that unedited, unfiltered to create the foundation for these briefing documents that we're going to be creating. So your spoken voice naturally captures your authentic tone and personality. You may not be aware of it, it may not shine through, so you think, but actually it does. And so whenever you capture that audio, your tone naturally comes out, especially after you've become more comfortable and familiar with the talking process and just kind of speak off the cuff. Then that's when your tone and personality really shine. So the audio captures nuances that typing often filters out, emotions with an emphasis on energy. And those two things are the gold. That's where it really comes down to the rubber meeting the road as far as context is the emotions, the emphasis that you place on things, and the energy behind it. And so once you've recorded your audio, everything that you can think of, you can feed it directly um, into your AI as foundational context. And tools like Otter AI or Descript.com are perfect choices for transcribing your audio. Now, me personally, I use Descript.com. I used to use Otter. For whatever reason, I switched to Descript, but I love Descript. It works extremely well. They're very generous with the number of hours, 30 hours, I think, or maybe 35 with a bonus on their basic plan. And so once you've done that, this method helps you extract 10 times more useful content in half the time of type notes, especially if you're not a typist. If you're a cherry picker like I am, forget it. I mean, speaking directly into your audio recording device and then having it transcribed is the way to go. Now, to give you a more complete context and framework for what you are actually interested in recording here, is pillar number one, background information. So, everything AI needs to understand the landscape. Okay. Pillar number two, you want models and examples. So, you want to show your clone what success looks like. And this is part of your successes in business, the planning of your projects, whatever the case may be for you. Pillar number three, your voice and tone. So the specific personality fingerprint of your brand. And again, this isn't something that you necessarily have to think about as much as just as a result of letting it flow, naturally capturing that. Pillar number four, constraints and requirements. So these are boundaries that shape the output. So this can be something as simple as talking about or recording the types of words or keywords that you normally would never use. It could include certain phrases that you always use, things like that. That's kind of how you want to think about pillar number four is the must-haves and the must-not-haves, okay? Missing even one pillar creates gaps in your AI and then it fills it with generic assumptions. And that is the one thing that we are out to end is giving the AI any room whatsoever to form assumptions that may or may not sound like you. So having strong context in all four pillars produces output requiring minimal editing. And honestly, I would venture to guess and perhaps even go so far as to say I wouldn't do any editing at all in this phase. Primarily, unless you do something silly like burp or whatever, but even that, it really doesn't matter. The goal here is to capture you in a natural setting. So each pillar reinforces the other and they work together as an integrated team. And that's why there's four. Okay. And as a matter of fact, as you master all four, your clone becomes virtually indistinguishable from you. And so, just to kind of give you an idea of the full picture that you want to provide for your clone, you'll want to start with who. Who is this for? Describe your specific audience in vivid detail. You can talk about their age range, whether they're male or female, what country or countries they may live in, your audience's likes and dislikes, as far as you know, the products and um, projects that you've created that they've gone crazy over, the ones that kind of bomb, maybe. So all of those things can help answer who who this is for. Next, you want to add the why. What problem are you solving and what transformation are you offering? Now, if you have multiple courses and trainings like I do, you may ultimately solve multiple problems, but it's important that you include all of them. Like for me personally, I am primarily, my audience is primarily a creative audience. It's an older audience, but they love creative projects. And so for me, I'm not going to teach so much like marketing agency type stuff as much as I would like how to illustrate a children's book or how to create an Oracle deck or whatever the case may be. And there's a lot of room within the creative space. So for me, it's important to define what problems I'm actually solving. Okay. You also want to include the history. What has happened before and what does the audience already know? Now, if you're just starting out a business, that's one thing, but chances are likely that you've been at this for a while. And because of that, you have past experiences. And so um, it's important to include those. You know, what did you create that was a home run? What did you create that wasn't so much? What does the audience already know about you and about the types of products that you create? You also want to explain the stakes. Why does this all matter? What happens if they don't take action? So, you can probably get an idea by now of where we're kind of heading with this. We're actually trying to get as much of a well-rounded, full history picture of who you are, who you've been, and who you are aspiring to be. You'll want to describe the relationship. What's your existing connection to this audience? Okay. And you can talk about like your delivery methods, like how you deliver your courses, maybe even the platforms that you're using. How many times per day or per week do you email them? What other types of communication do you have with them? Do you have communities, Facebook groups, whatever it is? It's important to include all of those when you're describing the relationship. You also want to share obstacles. What objections or resistance might your audience have? And sometimes, if we lived in a perfect world, we would have nothing to share here, but the reality is that we don't. And even if, in your mind, some of the objections don't make sense, or you don't understand, or you think people are just being a pain in the behind, still include those, okay? Because um, it's easy to develop an attitude about our own business where we can do no wrong. But if you're much more objective about everything, the reality is that we do get things wrong, and it could be for any number of reasons. So you definitely want to include this. Also, and this is the fun part, right, is to define our success. What specific outcome makes this project a win? And again, this can be any number of details. It might come down to reviews or feedback that you've gotten from your current and past courses. It could be sales numbers, the number of sales that you made on a specific project or projects. Um, it could be anything like that, but just really define the specific outcomes as much as you can. So the more background you provide, the more your AI can anticipate and address your needs. You'll also want to give your AI examples of content that you've created that you love. Okay. Maybe it is transcripts from your favorite courses or other projects. Perhaps you have software that you've developed, and you can provide detailed examples of the software and how it works and the results that are achieved by using that software. And you also want to include samples of your previous work that got the best audience response. So, uh, once again, this comes down to past courses, perhaps books, maybe webinars, podcasts, anything like that, perhaps even blog posts or emails that you've written that has gotten a great response, something that you're proud of. Always include those as well. You'll want to share examples from others that capture elements that you want to emulate. Now, this is one thing that you may not have thought of initially, but we all have our heroes in business, right? People who we aspire to be like. And perhaps there's something that they're doing really well that you look at it and kind of sigh and think, man, I wish I had thought of that. Well, go ahead and share those examples, and it can be from more than one person, but go ahead and share them because basically what you're doing is you're planning for success. You're not copying them or even emulating them so much, but yet the DNA, if you will, of their message, their methods ends up being built into your AI clone, which means that um, the outputs that you receive from it are enriched by their insights. So point out specific elements. Notice how this email opens up with a story. So this is where we get down more into the nitty gritty of how the information that we're inputting actually works, where you're going at a granular level and explaining specific things that really stand out to you that seem to work best for you. Also provide anti-examples as well. So I don't want it to sound like this. And it can be from your own work, but also even more from the work of emails or projects or whatever that you've received from other people. Whatever it is that gives you the ability to describe what you absolutely do not want in any of your outputs, that's what you want to include here. So the more examples that you feed, the better your AI pattern matches your style. And that's really an important point here to make. Examples teach nuance that instructions alone cannot communicate. Okay. So one perfect example is worth 1,000 words of explanation. And believe it or not, the AI, especially when you're training it, it gets it. It understands. It's incredibly intelligent. And as a matter of fact, it wants to provide the best possible output that it can for you, but without it having the context of how you speak, how you think, what you like, what you don't like. Without all of that, the AI is going to only ever best guess, okay, rather than actually draw from your personal experience to output the best possible result. So, after providing the initial context, you want to ask your AI, what questions do you have for me? And this is really key because we can think that we have included everything that we could possibly imagine. But again, the AI has a way of asking questions that perhaps we never would have thought of before. And it may come as simple as, well, I would prefer to have more of X, whatever X is, more examples or more anti examples, or whatever the case may be. And so you want to answer every question thoroughly, even ones that seem obvious to you. And the AI will ask you questions. Okay. And then you want to ask, what else would help me do this better? So the point here, if you haven't figured it out yet, is that you want to really gather together the most accurate snapshot of who you are as a business person as you can provide, and keep the Q&A going until your AI says it has everything that it needs. So this process typically takes around 1 or 2 hours for major projects, and it's worth every second of it. The questions reveal blind spots in your context that you didn't even know existed. And it doesn't matter how thorough you think you are, you're going to have blind spots. Okay. And so each answer you provide becomes permanent context for future interactions. And this collaborative refinement is what separates 2x results from 10x results. And I think you would agree with me that it's the 10x results that we're really after. So just to kind of give you some idea of the differences between the transformation before all of the answers and after is here before a generic kind of thing, write me a sales email for my course. So exactly how would it know what type of email to write or what type of course, as opposed to after, which is a full audio dump about your course, student transformations, your teaching philosophy, example emails you've loved, your audience's specific fears. Which of these ultimate output results do you think are going to be better? Well, the after, of course. Here's another one. Before results sounds like every other marketer, corporate, pushy, and forgettable, as opposed to after, it sounds like you on your best day, authentic, compelling, and converting. Before, create a social media post about AI tools. After, your specific audience journey, your unique perspective, examples of your most engaging post, your signature phrases and style. And so the context-rich version takes longer to set up, but produces usable content immediately. And so for me, whenever I set up mine, it took about an hour and a half. And I put everything into it that I could think to put into it, quite honestly. And after I uploaded everything and all of that, I looked and I was at like 5% of how much that I could technically upload. And I use transcripts and all kinds of things from courses and all of that. So obviously, the more that you can add to it, the better you're going to be off. And so you can calculate your true time savings like this. Setup time plus zero editing plus no setup plus hours of revision. And so what you want to do is create a master context document that captures your brand DNA. And it includes your origin story, your values, your unique methodology, and signature phrases. And once again, to review, you want to document your audience avatar with specific demographics, psychographics, and language, and save your best performing content as permanent reference examples. And so essentially what you're doing is you're building a voice guide by capturing your specific word choices, humor style, and energy. And then you can update your context document as your brand evolves and refines. And that's one of the cool things about the Agentic IQ platform is that you can always add to and update any of your documents as more things come together. So for instance, the projects that you're working on now versus 6 months from now, it could be completely different. And so you can use the newer language and add to the document, and your outputs will dynamically change. So use this master document as the foundation for every project prompt. Your clone gets smarter and more you with each context layer that you add. Now, for sensitive topics, add context about your audience's emotional state and concerns. For technical content, include your philosophy on simplifying complex ideas. For launch sequences, you can provide the full customer journey map and emotional arc. For repurposing, you can share the original content plus your vision for transformation. For series content, create a master brief covering the entire series theme and flow. For collaborative projects, include context about other voices and perspectives involved. For time-sensitive content, add current events, context, and relevance triggers. And an advanced tip here is to ask AI to create context questions for you to answer before starting. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is all of these different things and different ways that I've been saying the same thing, is ultimately to guide you to create the most complete context documents that you can. And so just to kind of put it in context for you, step one, you'll want to download an audio recording app to test it with a 5-minute brain dump. Okay. Step two, choose one upcoming project to use as your context mastery practice ground. Step three, create your first full audio brain dump, aim for 15 to 30 minutes minimum. Step four, transcribe and feed to your AI, then run the question protocol. Step five, compare this output to your previous generic prompt results. Step six, build your master context document with brand DNA and voice guide, which basically just means all of the information that you're providing it. Step seven, make the question protocol mandatory for every significant project. And then you'll want to commit, which basically requires investing the 1 to 2 hours of context creation before expecting 10x output results. Now, one thing about creating this document or set of documents really is that once they're done, unless you need to update them for some future reason like we talked about earlier. This is going to be the heaviest amount of time investment that is required initially whenever you're setting up your total workflow. But once it's done, it's done. Now, there are a series of agents that perform specific tasks within the Ugentic IQ framework, and each of these agents have their own context questions that are specific to what they're creating for you. And we'll take a look at one of those here in just a minute. But the point that I want to share with you is how important the initial document structures are. But once they're done, they're done. So what we're going to do now is switch over to Ugentic IQ and do a little bit of demo. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just to kind of give you some insight into what you can expect. And so here we are inside one of Onyx accounts. He has several. And you can see here that he's provided about 50% written content. And just to kind of give you a quick overview of what's available, you can see here where you can upload more. And if you click on that, you can just dump your files into this. You can even include URLs if you have like a website or something like that. You can always grow your digital self. In other words, you can add more information. And basically, it works the same way. You can see here where it supports PDF, doc files, PowerPoint files, text files, MD text files, MP4s, MOVs, MP3s, waves, and so on. Now, your maximum file size is a gigabyte, so you'll want to keep that in mind. But you can add any and all of the documents that you can imagine in here. And another thing that you can do, you can talk to yourself. So we could have a conversation. In this case, I'm not Onik, but I could have a conversation with Onik if I wanted to. But what I also want to show you are the agents. And there are a lot of agents that I have here. And just to kind of give you an idea of how one of these work, I'm going to choose the topic research template. And so I'll click on chat with agent, and we're going to create a new chat here. And so it asks a number of context questions up front. So what your primary niche is. So for me, I'm going to type in AI tools. Target audience, I'm going to say 35 to 50-year-olds. Content pillars. So content pillars are basically your themes within your niche or topic. And so I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to say AI creativity, AI writing, and AI illustration. Okay. And I could add more if I want, but 3 is fine. Now, our platform focus here, I'm going to say YouTube long form. And competitor channels, this is an optional thing, so I'm just going to skip it and click complete setup. And so what's happening now is the agent is taking my responses from the questions combined together with the digital version of ONIC and creating a response for me. Now, depending on the agent, depending on how many inputs there are, it can take a couple minutes typically to provide this output, but I think you'll be pleasantly surprised whenever you see this result. It's certainly much better than going into, say, Chat or Claude Raw and just saying, here's my topic, give me some research stuff. Okay, so you can see here it says, let's dive into some engaging content ideas tailored for YouTube long form that align with your niche of AI tools, specifically focused on AI creativity, AI writing, and AI illustration. These topics aim to captivate your target audience of 35 to 50-year-olds. So it breaks them down into sections, the 3 cluster sections, and then ideas within those. And so we have a couple here. I'm just reading down through these. So I think what I'm going to do is select this one right here, I think. Yeah, I think I'm going to select this one right here and paste it into the chatbot here for the agent. I'll create a guide with these 4 sections: introduction, getting started, core concepts, and step-by-step instructions. Should I proceed? Yes. Now, one of the things that it will absolutely do in its output is include words, phrases, those types of things that ONIC would typically use. I'm not in my own account right now, I'm in his. And so how he speaks, how he thinks, all of that is being communicated through the outputs that the AI agent here is actually creating for us. And by the way, as this is finishing up, right now I believe there are around 30 or 40 agents, so there's quite a few that you can choose from on a wide variety of topics. Certainly a lot of agents focused on social media output and those kinds of things, as you would imagine. Okay, so it wrote it in complete form. Here's the thing, you're probably spending hours staring at a blank screen trying to figure out what content to create next. Here's the thing is a phrase that ONIC uses a lot. You know your audience is out there scrolling past thousands of videos every day, but somehow your brilliant ideas get lost in the noise. Meanwhile, your competitors are posting consistently. Their channels are growing and you're stuck in analysis paralysis, wondering if your next video will even get views. The brutal truth, most creators fail not because they lack talent or expertise,